What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Chris, this is 4K Motoring, and today we've got another motorcycle video featuring our 2022 Ducati Multistrada. Today we're going to be testing a product from Innovv, short for innovation as I'm told, one of their dash cams for motorcycles, front and rear dash cams. Advertising the front being a 2K resolution, 1080p rear resolution. This is a very compact, easy to use motorcycle dash cam system that has pretty high reviews. I've actually been pretty excited to test this thing myself. They've sent us their K6 dash camera system, and we're gonna go ahead and get that installed on our bike, get some footage, and see how it really works. Okay, the first thing I wanna do is open this up and just see what's in the box. Lift off the cover. Inside the little paper that reminds us that their brand name is derived from the word innovate, motorcycle technology with you in mind. See if that's the case. This is a pretty compact camera system for you guys that have been following the channel. So far, this Chingy system is our favorite overall Android Auto kind of dash cam all-in-one thing. They have these pretty typical Chinese big cameras. I've tested a couple dash cams that have these things that are pretty large. They're short but large. By comparison, these Innovv are metal instead of plastic, so that's a nice touch, but they seem a little bit longer overall and just a little bit less in diameter. As usual, we have a box with a bunch of included. We got some straps and mounting hardware, it looks like, some adhesive strips. We've got some more mounting hardware. Got a GoPro mount and a wrench, a couple tools, and we have our power wires. Looks like we have a black, red, and yellow power wire, which seems pretty common. It says there pretty clearly right on the wiring harness itself, red and black go to the battery, and yellow goes to an accessory wire, 12 volts, that turns on and off with the bike. That's how the camera is going to operate. We have our cameras themselves with all their connectors and wires right in here. There is no central hub or box. I believe it's all kind of handled in the cameras. And we have our instructions right underneath. So the instructions are a pretty big sheet here that show you how to use everything. Everything is well laid out. It does specify that we are working with a 2K front camera at 30 FPS and a 1080p rear camera at 30 FPS. For those of you that have watched my channel, you know that I operate the Garmin XT2 on my Ducati here. And in addition to the Cigic navigation system and my phone on the handlebar mounts, I really didn't have room for another screen. A lot of these products have a wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay head unit that kind of controls the DVR, which is pretty cool if you don't have one. I'm already set in that department on this particular bike, so I love that this kit is so compact. It's going to make it really easy to install and mount on my bike.
One eternity later.
Well, guys, it is the next morning and we did finally get this bike put together. It actually went together pretty easily. I'm pretty impressed with this overall kit. Has just about everything you need to get this thing set up. Let me show you what it looks like. So in selecting a mounting location for the front camera, I wanted something kind of centrally placed that wasn't going to block the radar or anything else. And what I went with was this mounting location right under the front. I made sure there's enough clearance between the fender and the camera. That way our suspension can still move up and down without crushing anything. Was a little bit difficult to get what is basically a GoPro mount is what they use for the front camera, which makes it kind of easy to use. You can put it just about anywhere. But with the weird curve of this bike and being hung upside down, I had to use some extra adhesive to get that thing to stick up there. But it works pretty well. The front camera is really where everything is maintained. This does all the Wi-Fi, this does all the controlling, the micro SD cards in the back of this. So everything happens right in this front camera. This is the 2K camera. On the back, there are a couple screws. They're not captive, which is a little bit disappointing. When you remove them, they can fall out and you'd lose these pretty easily. But behind there is where our micro SD card is if you want to take that out for any reason. And it makes it pretty easy to slip this thing on and off. I'll include some video from this front camera riding around. Overall, I think it does a pretty good job. It is 2K. 30 FPS is a little low for a dash cam, doesn't capture movement very well, but the resolution is pretty decent. So you guys tell me what you think. Now on something like the Multistrada V4, it was a little difficult to get all the wiring in there like it has been for every accessory I've wired so far. What I ended up doing was taking the wire from this front camera, routing it right behind this panel right here. I was able to remove this panel and remove that back piece that has these fins on it. Routed the wiring basically following this line here behind these panels to where the battery is under the seat. The wiring harness, like I said, is pretty easy. There's a positive and negative that just go to constant 12 volt battery leads. And then there's a 12 volt accessory wire that goes to a switched 12 volt source. We already had one of those found from some of the previous stuff using a fuse tap. A lot of bikes you can just tap into the taillight or license plate light harness and that works as well. We have our rear camera mounted, kind of hanging upside down. This one was a little bit difficult on this bike. Typically, I think you'd mount it somewhere under this taillight would be probably ideal, but we have this radar sensor we can't block. So I went ahead and put it right up here. It gets a little bit of glare from the actual taillight itself. I might have to extend that back and forth. But if you guys can see this mount, how I was able to do it up here, I wasn't really happy with the way the rear mount attaches. There's not a really good way to mount it to things, especially upside down. I used the included adhesive pads, but that really didn't work too well, so I ended up having to kind of secure it with a couple zip ties just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and I'm curious to see the vibrations we're going to get off of that because that is not really a solid mount. All in all, this went on with pretty minimal tools. It took me a 4mm and a T25, basically were the only sockets I needed to get all the panels off on this particular Multistrada V4S. Obviously, depending on what bike you use, it's going to differ a little bit. The wiring harness was really that simple. It connected very easily. There wasn't a big box or anything you had to hide or put somewhere on the bike. Overall, I think this is a pretty smooth setup. I've played with the app just a little bit so far, and it seems pretty intuitive. There's nothing really difficult about it. Once you get the Wi-Fi paired, everything goes pretty smoothly, and you get to check the video pretty easily. I usually take the SD cards out of these things and put them in my computer to do edits. So that's typically how I operate these, but it's nice to know that real time, if you need to look at something on the camera or verify something that you just saw, you can pull up on your phone without disassembling anything or carrying any tools with you and get that video footage. The Innovv K6 is available on Amazon and RevZilla. I'll have links to both of those in the description below. Let's go ahead and roll some video, check out the audio, check out the stabilization and the overall quality in these videos, and let me know what you think in the comments below. I know those are pretty short clips that I had broken up between the front and rear camera, just so you guys can get a feel for different lighting conditions, hear the audio that's available from both, and just see the stabilization, the quality, that sort of thing. Let me know in the comments below what you think about those. When I scrolled through the footage slowly, especially in the brighter settings, daytime settings, I was able to kind of frame by frame go through and pick out just about every license plate that was nearby, which I know is one of the main concerns with these dash cams in order to prove other people are responsible for things. So the 2K dash cam, the 1440p, is enough for license plates when they're fairly close to you. They don't really reach out very far, but I was able to, at least at 30 FPS, get a good view of, or at least a readable view of most close-in license plates. The rear camera at 1080p, obviously in North Carolina we don't have front license plates, so it was a little bit harder to get a read on what text would be shown, but you can see drivers as they drive by operating their vehicles to kind of prove who's operating a vehicle that may have done something, and most importantly, prove what vehicles are doing around you that may or may not be the reason that you had some sort of incident. I've now operated this system for a couple weeks since I've installed it, and overall it has been very easy. It just starts and stops itself. It requires basically zero input from the rider day to day, which makes this system very reliable. There are no big boxes or anything like that. Like I said, it is just that front camera, the rear camera, and the wires that connect them. That runs everything. The front camera houses all of your app connections via Wi-Fi and the micro SD card. Again, the only real complaint I have is the mounting hardware. GoPro mount is good, but included, I did have to use some extra tools, some zip ties, and some extra adhesive to get these things mounted correctly. Obviously, there's a bunch of different ways to do this for different bikes, and making a universal system is quite difficult. That said, they do fit just about every bike. There is a way to make these fit every bike, and I think that they're pretty good. Only little complaints I have are the non-captive screws on the back of the front camera. If you remove the actual plug from it, from the housing to get to that SD card inside, it is very easy to lose those little screws because they're not held in and they are tiny. So be careful with that. I have seen that they do have some versions of these cameras with the optical stabilization, but those do reduce the resolution. So I'm not sure that trade-off is quite worth it. I think the 2K, even with a little bit of shaking that you saw, was still able to go through and be able to show license plates, which is the important part of a dash cam. By the nature of the work I do and that I've done for the last decade and a half, I respond to a lot of vehicle collisions. And I'll tell you, when I respond and investigate these collisions, one thing that is incredibly useful is having dash cam footage. Being able to show video of exactly how an incident happened takes away all the he said, she said, and almost guarantees the person that was in the wrong gets held accountable. Being able to record that video as you ride with no input from the rider, and then being able to, in real time, pull up on your phone, hey, this is what happened, is going to be huge for any sort of collision investigation, and through one incident, no doubt would pay for itself. So again, feel free to play back some of those videos. Let me know exactly what you think. If there are different features that you'd like to see in a dash cam, different resolutions, different frame rates, stabilization options, stuff like that, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to be able to reach out to these companies and see if there's a product out there that really meets everyone's expectations. Like I said, I'm going to leave links to this camera down in the description below. It's available both on Amazon and on Revzilla. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to this channel and liking this video. And of course, we'll be back soon.